Welcome to the December 13th edition of the PFF Forecast. It's a great show. We're going to dive deep the Tommy DeVito, Sean Stellato story that all of you have been waiting to hear. Good 60-minute conversation on that. Injuries, weather, get up or made up, makes its second appearance. It's going to be fantastic. I've been preparing for it all week. We, of course, have SGP strategy with Judah and locks of the week. Let's rock. Brad, you just put out a great article. It's on pff.com. It is the top 50 free agents, and each of them has a comp with them. And I'm just curious why Tommy DeVito is not number one and why his comparison is not Tom Brady.
I think his comp would be a blend of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning with like Lamar Jackson's athleticism. I think is probably how I would blend it up. He's an early rights or exclusive rights free agent in 2025. When we get there, the deal that Mr. Sean Stellato negotiates is going to break. Like Shohei Ohtani might blush when that deal comes across the wire.
How do you say no when that man is across the table from you?
Good luck.
I mean, your family's in jeopardy. you can't say no. What an incredible game. We saw two on Monday night, both underdogs winning outright. I've been on the Tommy D train for a while. And, I know that Judah has been on the Tommy D train. I don't know that I've quite gotten Brad and Arjun on there, but I think now it's fair to say this is a Tommy DeVito positive podcast.
George, you and I are riding. But you and I are riding the Giants against the Saints, and we got some fresh cleavage. Shout out Jay Glazer, some fresh CLV. So we're riding high on Tommy Cutlets.
Judah's actually you were. Did you actually hit that one of the SGPs, or you were a few yards short?
I was 4 yards short, but enough to get a nice hedge on the yards that Washington.
Yeah. It's funny to say this, but Bryce Young has been materially worse than Tommy DeVito. Desmond Ridder has been materially worse than Tommy DeVito. It's kind of incredible that a player that you couldn't name at the start of the season has been that good. All right, we've got a great show, a lot of injuries, some weather games. We'll get kicked off with that. Of course, as I mentioned at the top, Get Up or Made Up, a new segment, an honor to the once great segment, which was the Quibi, Quibi or not Quibi, makes its return today. That'll be later on the show. Let's start with injuries and weather. Brad, what you got for us?
Yeah, it might be quicker to just say who's not out, but no. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. Justin Jefferson actually is in, which I think is the bigger surprise of the week. Told reporters he's going to play. So Justin Jefferson catching passes from, Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Tommy DeVito, who knows. Justin Herbert's out for the year, and Keenan Allen is not interested in catching passes from Easton Stick on Thursday night, so he's also out. And then for the Raiders, Max Crosby and Josh Jacobs haven't practiced. And then Devontae Adams, also with an illness, is questionable. That game, Easton Stick versus Aiden O'Connell tomorrow night, is going to be a doozy. The Falcons, I would keep an eye on their offensive line. 4 starters are not practicing or limited or, maybe they all play, but I would keep an eye on the O-line there. Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens, grade 1 MCL sprain. Won't miss a lot of time. I think could miss one game. If you want to attack some matchups there, maybe like an Evan Engram with the Jags, I think that's a big loss for them in Kyle Hamilton. DJ Moore for Chicago, dealing with an ankle injury. The Browns have a million injuries in that game, mostly on defense. Grant Delpit at the safety, Ogbakarankwa, the edge rusher. Denzel Ward might play, which would be huge up against the DJ Moore. But for the Bears, who I thought I liked a little bit, the loss of a DJ Moore is a problem, potentially could just be rest. Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd limited for Cincinnati, but I think they'll be good to go. I mentioned Cleveland's defense, which is missing a million guys. They're also down to their 4th and 5th starting tackle. And the Bears defense is elite, if you haven't heard. So that game is going to be a doozy as well. Christian Watson, non-participant estimation today. It's one of those for a Saturday game. You kind of estimate what you would do had you practiced with that hamstring. I think they're kind of lean towards a no-go again for him. He just can't avoid those soft tissues. For the Texans, C.J. Stroud in the protocol, apparently progressing nicely per D'Amico Ryans, but we don't know yet. Good news in Houston, Nico Collins at receiver and Dalton Schultz at tight end, hopefully going to play per their own words. Isaiah Pacheco did not practice again. I honestly think he matters in this offense with how bad they are at throwing outside the numbers right now. Like him running hard downhill has actually been meaningful, and he might not play again. We have the Miami Dolphins, Devon Achane, a new injury, another injury for our guy, unfortunately, did not practice today. And Tyreek Hill with that ankle that bothered him during the game also did not practice. The New Orleans Saints against our guy, our boy, Tommy D. You had Chris Olave, did not practice. Taysom Hill and Rashid Shaheed limited. Last but not least, TJ Watt, full practice. Alex Highsmith, limited. And Deontay Johnson did not practice for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the full injury rundown. Last piece here, weather report. We're adding that in as well. Jets Dolphins is going to be, it looks pretty ugly. Winds 20 to 35 miles an hour, depending on the gusts, and probably a decent chance for rain. At Carolina for the Falcons-Panthers game, moderately bad. And then Jags game hosting the Ravens and Seattle hosting Philadelphia. Moderate concern there, but not a terrible weather week for December. The one to keep an eye on for fantasy, whatever, is Jets at Dolphins.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think so Adams, obviously that game is tomorrow. He just has an illness. Do you think he plays?
Yeah, I think he's sick of being on the Las Vegas Raiders is what he came down with. Yeah, no, I'm sure he does. I would assume he does. It's a good matchup. But you don't really know. He was talking about how he felt bad that people pay a lot of good money to come to a game and they scored 0 points. But yeah, I think he probably will.
Yeah, I paid a lot of good money for him in fantasy. He scored 0.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. The Devon Achane injury is a toe, apparently, which is absolutely devastating. Raheem Mostert, guy's an absolute stud. Good for him. Anything that you heard, Judah, from kind of piqued your interest based on where the Lions are right now?
I mean, definitely some SGP angles from what I just heard. I think if we want to just talk about the Lions, it kind of gets me a little more onto the Colts there, seeing as like they're pricing a decent amount on Watt coming back in. I think I don't think that kind of changes the fundamentals of the team. Those are the ones that come to mind, especially even the Texans become appealing now. Like, especially if there's some chance that Stroud comes back, you're going to certainly get a great price. And I think like that's probably priced a little bit more towards the downside. And hearing that Schultz and Nico Collins should be back is, I actually think, very important for a Texans team. Like the drop off, we like as you guys talk about like on Sunday night, like we always like to mention the like Robbie Greer stuff. Brad, I'm really happy you planted your flag on Davis Mills because I would do the same thing. But that is kind of my angle now, would be looking at the Texans. I think that's the most notable one outside of the SGP, which I'll lead with in a minute.
Yeah, the Jets Dolphins game having potential gusts up to 35 miles an hour, I think, is interesting. I always with stuff in like Florida, there's a lot of variance in the weather, in general. But I always feel like out there I hear things and it's like, does it actually materialize? That might be one that I might look to take a flyer on, see what the prices are like. And if they've depressed them a lot, I've got to imagine it's going to take the market a little while to adjust Zach Wilson's priors. 300 game does not, a passing offense makes. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know, I don't want to overreact to the Dolphins, but does it make sense for them to try and push a Tyreek Hill in this game? They've got a really big game with the Bills coming up at the end of the year. Like, that's probably what's going to actually matter. So, I could see them being a little hesitant there. I don't know. The Jets, I think, are interesting. And we talked about them on Sunday quite a bit. That's already down to 8.5, 9.
Yep.
Yeah. So congrats on the closing line value. All right, let's get into some SGPs. Judah, where do you want to start?
Yeah, we'll start with Green Bay. this is a spot where I do think injuries matter a lot. So I think a bunch of angles here. Number one, as a general note, we talk about this a lot. I think a lot of the value in this time of the season with SGPs comes from balancing the changes over the course of a season relative to the season-long priors, which is to say, sometimes the sample of 4 or 5 games, for whatever reason, are actually more reliable or carry more signal in predicting the future output. And I think that is certainly true of the Packers generally. This is Jordan Love getting materially better, which I don't think is necessarily a coincidence, especially when considering the fact that this is an extremely young offense all around him. Young players, especially rookies, which they have a lot of, especially at wide receiver, tend to get better as the season goes along. This should not be news. And I think what's more important for my purposes is seeing how this offense has changed to being one of a kind of run heavy to neutral to really relying on Jordan Love, and their pass rates are way higher. If anything, that was kind of the signal from the Monday night game to me. It's definitely windy, which affected a lot of those deep throws, but that is certainly the style of attack, which matters a lot more to me than the results, which I think are going to be semi-noisy week to week. All of which is to say, we've got kind of 2 angles with the pricing here. Number one, Tampa Bay has been a pass funnel. I mean, we talked about Desmond Ridder last week, and he threw for 350 yards. It's not because Desmond Ridder is a terrific quarterback. This is just Sorry, I apologize. These are the sorts of things that can happen in an NFL game, and they match up really, really well. This is a team that's allowed a top 5 rate of explosive plays. As you can see on screen, a couple of guys on the line, but none of their corners have been particularly good. Meanwhile, the wide receivers for the Packers have been very good. Jordan Love is the highest ADOT in the league. He wants to throw deep. That's exactly where Tampa Bay is vulnerable, and they're going to do so a lot. What really intrigues me so we have that angle of just like Green Bay passing attack and the fact that the market has sold off a bit on Green Bay by virtue of what happened Monday night. And I actually think that we learned more positive on Green Bay on Monday night. That is that it's been sticky. They're going to continue to throw the ball well above their previous rates. That's the sticky part. But the second thing here is how to price the receivers here becomes very complicated, because this was a team where they had 3 to 4 guys who were all earning targets at roughly the same rate, and it was very spread out between 18 and 22%. But if you take away Wicks, who I believe, Brad, you can correct me if I'm wrong, has a high ankle sprain and will likely be missing this game, and then also Christian Watson seems to be on the wrong side here. Now all of a sudden it's the targets are going to go, and Luke Musgrave, of course, is out. The targets are going to go to Jaden Reed. They're going to go to Romeo Doubs. Maybe Samari Toure gets a little bit of run here, but the books are going to have to use some sample of pricing these guys where they were kind of 4, 5, 6 mouths to feed on a spread out offense. I don't think that's going to be the case in a really good matchup as it is. So I'm going to want to be, again, it's price dependent. I envision myself wanting to be betting on Doubs and Reed. Doubs as more of the downfield guy who has a higher ADOT, and I think probably makes more sense in this advantage, but in this matchup, But I also can see myself building with Reed, maybe adding some receptions there, because I think for Reed to go over, he's either got to break a long yards after the catch type play, or he's going to stack up 7, 8, 9 receptions. But all of this is to say it's a great matchup. I think Love's strengths work well with Tampa Bay's weaknesses, and we're going to take advantage of previous target distributions and the likely target concentration that we will now have because of the Packers wide receiver injuries.
I like it. Wicks, I did see, did get injured. I don't think there's much of a chance he plays. And I would agree with you on Watson for sure. I think the interesting thing as well here, consider Tampa Bay and I don't know that it's possible to get worse, but giving up 350 yards to Desmond Ridder, they've been bad all year. That is uniquely spectacular in how bad it is. Drake London looked like peak Randy Moss or Terrell Owens in this game. It was honestly impressive last week what they did. So I think, while Drake London is obviously very good, the receivers, as you mentioned on Green Bay, very solid as well and athletic. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, how Rodgers leaves and all of a sudden they have all of this young wide receiver talent, which is really ironic because he took with him crappy wide receiver talent from Green Bay. very strange how that works. I don't know. I can't really put two and two together there, but there must be some kind of connection. So I'm a big fan. Are you going to play different SGPs or different builds with each receiver? Are you going to put them both in the same one? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think it does depend on pricing. If I can get alts, if I can really extend to the furthest, let's say, I'm thinking on something like points bet, oftentimes you'll get a max of like 80 or 95. If we get 80s at like 10 plus to 1, I can see both of them hitting. And I'd really be intrigued by that. But I will also be building each individual receiver with Jordan Love, and then just like Jordan Love plus spread, I think, as kind of the core play there, without trying to guess which of the wide receivers in particular are going to pop off in this game.
Very fair. All right, where to next?
Let's go to Cincinnati.
On to Cincinnati.
Jake Browning. We're on to Cincinnati. I think this is a play on. Right, we guys talked on Sunday night about Jake Browning versus the blitz, and it's a different story with Brian Flores doing it all the time. But I think the exact way to attack, actually, maybe Jake Browning is the best in the league versus the blitz, and his EPA against the blitz is 0.44, which is it's 25% better than the guy in second against the blitz right now. I don't think that's necessarily going to sustain itself, but if it's directionally right, that is very important for a matchup against the Brian Flores defense, which blitzes more than half the time and way more than anyone else in the league. If that's true, then that's exactly the type of way that Jake Browning can continue on his success. I think the Vikings defense has surprised a lot of people, and rightfully so. But I also do think they're so reliant on a blitz that it does really depend on the matchup. And the quarterbacks they face really matter more, where if you can beat the blitz, you're going to beat the Vikings. And I think a lot of that kind of success in recent weeks has been a function of playing quarterbacks who are not necessarily great against the blitz. It also leads to, and the way I envision this happening is, maybe this is just, I have this one play stuck in my head of the Jaguars bringing an all-out blitz and Jake Browning, identifying the one-on-one coverage and just throwing it up to Jamar Chase. And I think you can do the same thing with T. Higgins, but I do think that lends itself to a certain explosive play element that the Vikings have surprisingly been good this year, but I do think Jake Browning can continue to excel at. Again, the main angle here is really just like, if Jake Browning is as good as he's played, again, I don't think you throw for 300 yards by accident. That's not something that 300 yards in back-to-back games by accident. That's not something that just regularly happens. And it's not as if they're going against like cakewalk defenses, and maybe the Jags are bad, whatever. But it's playing on that angle. It's playing on the fact that like maybe he is really good against the blitz. That's why we're going to attack the tails. And that's going to be a bet on Browning and the spread. It's going to be a bet on Browning plus Chase, maybe Browning plus Higgins, especially as a guy who can win downfield. And I think if he's just identifying the single coverage and T. Higgins gets single coverage, he can very well hit for a bunch of explosive plays. And his production has not been particularly great, though the role remains extremely secure. I'll be betting on all three of those angles, I believe.
You said that you don't throw for 300 yards by accident. What you really said there is Desmond Ridder is great. That was the
back-to-back games, which Desmond Ridder did do, I believe, earlier this year.
All right, we need one more Ridder game to solidify his status. I like this one a lot. I wonder how much pricing of the Vikings defense will go into this. They have been really, really good. They shut Aiden O'Connell last week, which not something that I would hang my hat on. So maybe you get a little bit of a depressed price there. Although I do feel like based on Browning's success, they will adjust significantly for him, I would guess. But that makes sense. Again, are you playing these? You might, depending on price, package both receivers together or split them up.
I think this target distribution is in theory, it should be like just Chase and Higgins, but they give targets to their tight ends. They give targets to the back. They give targets to Boyd that I don't think both of these guys can hit in one game. That I'm going to try and bet on either Chase or Higgins, and the main action will just be Browning with the spread.
Little Chase Brown, little screen action against the blitz.
That's right. That honestly, if I could get a Chase Brown alt receiving line, I absolutely would take that. But I wish myself luck finding that.
I was going to say, I don't know that backup running backs are going to get alts priced on them. One day we'll get that. I like it. Any others?
Yeah, we'll go with one more, and this is playing to Brad's injury point in Jacksonville. Calvin Ridley, since Christian Kirk has gone out, has slid into the slot a bunch. I made this case last week with Cooper Kupp and the Rams that Kyle Hamilton has been unbelievable for the Ravens, and by separation metrics, he's 99th percentile. He's been unbelievable covering slot receivers. Or even Parker Washington, by the way, if we're getting some good prices here, I don't mind that. But I think the Ravens defense has been terrific, but there's a lot more uncertainty than a typical great defense. They really have faced an extremely easy schedule of offenses. And then the spots we thought were tough tests in hindsight actually haven't really looked like that. The Lions offense, all of a sudden, Jared Goff's not been particularly great. The Seahawks, at the time, it's this is a legit offense. They haven't been particularly good. And they really did get, Matthew Stafford and the running game, for that matter, was really lighting them up. That I do think there is some uncertainty associated with the Ravens defense, whereas they're being priced as the Browns of just this defense is elite. They will shut down your offense kind of no matter what. That's the kind of main play on Lawrence and this Jaguars defense. And also the Jaguars have kind of had this interesting, if you look at their pass rates over the course of the season, it kind of started with, beginning of the season, we are going all in on Trevor Lawrence. We are going to give him the free reins of this team. And they were passing way above expected. Then it kind of trickled down as Lawrence didn't really take that next step. And they can't run the ball at all right now, no matter who their opponent is. And we've seen now the pass rates start to trickle up again, which all matters because the book is going to be pricing now a big sample of games in the middle chunk of the season where the Jags were an extremely run-heavy team, and I don't think that reflects the current reality of this team. Calvin Ridley, again, this is an example of a guy who has an elite role. He had 14 targets last week. He's going to see the deep balls. I think he's going to slide into the slot a bunch where he's going to have a good matchup now that Kyle Hamilton is out, and that will not be priced appropriately. I think this is a great long shot on a team where would it be all that shocking? Yes, Trevor Lawrence is hurt. Would it be all that shocking if we had this conversation on Sunday night and we're the Jaguars put together a really great passing performance against the Ravens. Maybe the Ravens defense isn't as great as we thought, and the Jaguars offense is pretty good. That's not rocket surgery. We've seen this before, and yeah, you like that rocket surgery, Brett. I know.
I'm a big rocket surgery fan. Josh Dobbs, rocket surgeon. I don't know if people knew.
I had Chris Caliendo in mind, but either way, I think the slot is going to be the method of attack, and Calvin Ridley should be the beneficiary of some positive regression based on his underlying usage.
Well, Parker Washington, I like that shout out as well. Also, this is not the Ravens. Let's remind myself here. So the Ravens go to San Francisco on Christmas Day after this. So play on Sunday night twice in a row. I guess that's not. Is Christmas on Monday this year? I forget. Yeah. But that's obviously a huge game. People are saying it is a preview of the Super Bowl. So potentially a bit of a reason to, rest a few guys or look ahead to the Niners in San Francisco. So I like that quite a bit. Brad, any thoughts on any of the SGP stuff?
I was going to talk about Cincinnati a little bit and get at that one. So I love to hear it because I had very, very similar ideas when I was looking at that game.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals. By the way, the Cincinnati Bengals, as we talk about every single week or most weeks, cannot cover tight ends. And our man, Gronkinson, the Lockmaster, he's back. So anyways, maybe that'll be one of the locks of the week. Shall we get right into it? Locks of the week. Last week really started strong. Justin Fields over 9.5 rushing attempts sailed over. Deebo Samuel, that was, in hindsight, we should have taken some alts there. His price when we discussed this last week was at 48.5. I think it closed lowish 50s. And Jamal Adams plays defense for the Seahawks. So he sailed over that by 50 yards. Absolute send. Van Ginkel did not get a half sack, unfortunately, and CeeDee Lamb somehow did not go over 7.5 catches. I think he finished with 7 or 6, something like that. So a couple of not great ones to close out. So we'll try and get back in the positive side of things today. Brad, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. So look, I'm not backing down. I'm not afraid. I'm going to start off with 2 alternate props. You talked about it. It was on my mind. I feel like we need to attack more if we have conviction on something. Why, lose a unit on a -115 play? We can get weird with it. So first I'm going to go to is George Pickens against the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, I want to bet on a Mitchell Trubisky-led passing attack. Stay with me. So the Colts are bottom 5 in the NFL in coverage grade on wide receivers, meaning receivers that line up out wide. They are 7th in EPA per play, or 7th worst in EPA per play on targets to wide receivers. And the Deontay Johnson injury I mentioned, maybe he doesn't play in this football game. They have guys playing outside corner in Indy, outside of the rookie Juju Brents, that not even trying to be funny. They might not be on NFL rosters come next year. They ignored the position. They traded Stephon Gilmore. They're kind of figuring things out otherwise. I also like it because their pass rush is kind of interior generated, and quietly James Daniels and Isaac Sumalo have been phenomenal for the Pittsburgh Steelers interior of the offensive line. Mason Cole's not a great pass protecting center, but he's been okay. So we talked about the high variance Mitchell Trubisky. We saw about the worst he could be. He was downright atrocious against Bill Belichick, but we knew that. He was going to throw up his Bears days. You now get a Gus Bradley sitting back in cover 3, and I think you're going to see him just take a bunch of shots and just spam the throws to Pickens. So the reason why I want an alt here in particular, besides the matchup, besides betting on a positively high outcome in a dome against the Colts at Indy, but also George Pickens. So the alt I was thinking of, we could either do over 50.5 is plus 130, and over 59.5 is plus 200. We could even go more than that. But you look at Pickens' season long, out of 13 games, he's gone over 75 yards in 5 of 13, and then under 50 in 7 of 13, and 1 at 58. So he either is going to go off for 75 plus, or he's going to have a below 50 game with 2 catches. So, I was thinking an alt. Anyway, that's the first angle, 50.5 plus 130, or 59.5, 2-1.
And the other thing is, I think Tomlin came out and said that George Pickens has been a distraction. Was that what he said? Something like that. He has been a distraction in the wrong, very, very much the wrong way. But it's a great point. I think these are the kinds of opportunities that you look for where the stars align, but everything else outwardly feels like the stars are not aligning, right? Where he's been kind of pouting, signs have not looked great. Tomlin has dealt with crazy wide receivers before. I'm sure he can deal with this one. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm talking about wide receivers, not tight ends.
Of course.
All righty. Judah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm going to get back to the podcast roots here with a spread that is taking Tommy Cutlets and the Giants plus 6 against the Saints. I think this is a team, the Saints that is, which has effectively abandoned the passing game. I mean, remember joking about this, get Derek Carr to throw for 100 yards against the Panthers, but they've actually just started to run the ball more than any other team in the NFL. That is the current iteration of the Saints. That is what they want to do. And they are being priced as the offensive earlier this season, where they were throwing it a bunch downfield to our guy, Rashid Shaheed, not to mention all of the receiver injuries. I mean, they don't really have, they're throwing it A.T. Perry out here. It's not great. You can't, Derek Carr should not be getting 6 points against anyone right now, especially with the way the Saints are constructed. And I think the Giants are kind of underrated too by most metrics, since they're, this defense is about average. Also, Derek Carr terrible against the blitz, which Wink Martindale loves to do. The Giants team has been fine. The offense, it's all the story of Tommy DeVito. The truth is, they're a below average offense, but that's exactly what the Saints are right now too. And 6 points is just far too much.
Better quarterback getting points in this game?
You betcha.
Is that a hypocrisy? Derek Carr has been abysmal. Tommy DeVito, find this on PFF.com, has a better pass rating from a clean pocket than Derek Carr. Better quarterback getting points. Tommy D. Lock it up. All right. My first, as it looks like I'm now bathing in sunlight. It's the witching hour here in San Diego.
Feel for
I'm
you,
gonna
man.
go. I'm gonna lead off with TJ Hawkinson. The total or over under that I'm seeing right now is 52.5. I think that is preposterous. By the way, he has gone 9-4 this year to the over on his opening line. People underestimating our king. And he's facing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have gotten absolutely chopped up. I think they're 30th in EPA per play allowed to tight ends. Nick Mullins coming in and playing for Josh Dobbs. We think Jefferson's going to be back. He lasted 3 plays in this game. You would expect that Lou Anarumo is going to say, hey, let's not let Justin Jefferson beat us. Meanwhile, TJ Hawkinson will be roaming wild, like a wild mongoose, against the Cincinnati Bengals defense that has gotten carved up by tight ends. So I like this as an alt as well. I think you might be able to get 70 plus or 80 plus. And if it weren't for Jamar Chase against this blitz, I do think there might be value on him to lead this game in receiving yards. So I might, while you guys are talking, Brad, find the price on an alt here, but I definitely love the over 52.5.
Yeah, definitely check out the alts. His first pass, Mullins comes in, throws a turnover-worthy play. That was a beautiful snag by TJ Hawkinson off the deflection. So
Yes.
obviously trust this guy. All right, so I mentioned I have two alts. So another alt I had here. All right, the Detroit Lions are, against running backs this season, 30th in coverage grade, 31st in EPA per dropback, and 30th in success rate on targets to players out of the backfield. They are playing a Denver Broncos team that kind of loves targeting running backs, and in particular, not going Javonte Williams, actually looking at Samaje Perine. And again, why I say the alt here. So his normal spread, I think, is 16.5, is minus 130 at 16.5. At over 25 receiving yards, you can get plus 150. And it's, again, a similar thing to the Pickens, narrative. Like, he's either going to be a focal point of the passing game or he isn't. He's gone over 30 yards in 6 out of 13 games. So why bet 16.5? Just go for the alt there, get the value, get the price. And half of his games, he's gone over that. And I think this will be, because they're so susceptible to targets out of the backfield, Nolan McNeil up the middle. So I think there's going to be a lot of targeting over the middle of the field, checking it down. They'll take some shots against this, porous Lions defense. But that's been the Russell Wilson, Sean Payton MO. Get the ball out quickly, let their guys make players miss in space. And the Lions have been struggling against that exact, approach this season.
I dig it.
I'm gonna stick with the same game here. That's going to be Sam Laporta over 46.5 yards receiving. By virtually any metric, the Broncos are a disaster defending tight ends. They're allowing the third most yards. They're bottom PFF or whatever. Literally anything you choose, they will be at the bottom of it. Sam Laporta has seen we have not talked enough about this, I don't think, truly dominant rookie season. Has been absolutely terrific, as you can see on screen. Top 10 PFF grade. He's also earning targets on nearly a fourth of his routes run. I don't know what's happened to Amon-Ra St. Brown the last couple of weeks, but that on the margins could mean something here. 46.5 is just not being priced for the role that Laporta has in this matchup against the Broncos team that's allowing close to 70 yards a game to tight ends. I love this spot, especially in a game in which I think the Lions might come out with pass heavy attack, even though the Broncos are terrible against the run. It would not be shocking for me to kind of see them go pass heavy and rely on Laporta.
You said his totals at, what is it?
46.5.
Yeah, I dig that. Laporta has been also I feel like their most consistent option. Amon-Ra St. Brown hasn't been over the last couple of games, which is sort of weird, but Laporta has been kind of their rock. All right. I'm going to another prop. This one, so you mentioned Isaiah Pacheco out potentially in this game for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been an absolute nightmare at wide receiver. And everyone's talking about Kadarius Toney this week, and rightfully so. The one player that has played well, and I'm looking for some props. I'm not seeing a ton here posted yet, but Rashee Rice gets to face J.C. Jackson, and crew in this game. And I think it could be, you expect Belichick to kind of try and shut down the number one option, which would obviously be Travis Kelce. But I think Rashee Rice kind of has that similar sort of rapport with Mahomes. And so if they're not going to be able to run the ball and they're going to take away Travis Kelce, which you've seen teams do with great effectiveness this year relative to previous years, I think Rashee Rice is the beneficiary there. And the corners in New England have not been particularly good. I'll pull that up on screen here. So I don't see a number out there. Of course, I'm just looking at one book right now. We'll see if I can find one here in a second. But I was hoping they'd be posted at this point, but it does not look like they are. But here you can see Patriots, J.C. Jackson, who is out here. He is the lowest ranked cornerback in the entire PFF system. Not great.
I think it's 2 years running, so you got to appreciate at such a variant position. He's been consistent, which you gotta appreciate.
28.7. He's improving though.
From last year or for? Oh my goodness,
it's not looking good. It's not great for JC.
It's not looking good at all. Oh, did you find before I jump in? Did you discover any Hawk alts for the boys?
I couldn't find any. I looked on FanDuel and couldn't see any yet. They didn't have a lot of Vikings up there, but I did see his total. I'll check DraftKings now.
Gotcha.
Where are you going to next, Brad?
Alrighty. So we talked about this game a little bit. In particular, how we like the idea of a Jake Browning against the blitz. We know that that's going to come from Minnesota. They're doing it all season long. I don't know. Hate just taking the -3. They had the hook before the week. I know Jefferson's going to play. It's probably why it moved from 3.5 to 3. Is it Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins? I'm not really sure. I just think Jefferson does matter. There's no question about that. I just like this matchup here for Cincinnati. On the flip side, I think you are going to see their defense has not been. You mentioned they're bad against tight ends, but otherwise they have been, much better than they were. We were kind of talking about our guy Lou on the struggle bus for a while. They've turned the corner the last month or so. I don't know. I don't hate just laying the field goal for Cincinnati.
I found it on DraftKings. So you can do 60 plus 125, 70 plus is basically 2-1 at plus 195, 80 plus is plus 285. They also have a special 50 plus receiving yards in each half is 6-1. 100, which is interesting because 100 plus yards is plus 650. So that makes literally no sense to me.
Yeah, zero.
It's like, what? That shouldn't be priced that way. I don't know. I definitely like 70 plus 2-1, 80 plus 285. Is there anyone else you wanted me to look at? I'll check Rashee Rice right now on DraftKings. Shout out DK. Laporta. Go ahead, Jude. I'll look this up while you're
I'm gonna go with James Cook over 53.5 rush yards. The Cowboys' run defense has been really terrible this season. It just hasn't exactly mattered because if you're winning by 3 scores, the opposing team can't exactly take advantage of your rushing attack. But I don't think this is going to be the same sort of matchup that Dallas has been accustomed to playing in recent weeks. Also worth noting that since Joe Brady took over, this team has become a lot run heavier. I mean, this was a team that was throwing, 10% over expected for a bunch of years running with Josh Allen. That is no longer the case, at least not through the offense that they've been running the past couple of weeks. Dallas is easily exploited on the ground, second rush success rate. James Cook has been awesome on the ground. A lot of this pricing is earlier in the season when he was splitting a bunch of work, and also I think just taking in the Dallas rushing attack, which has not played an opponent that can keep up with them. I really, really like this one at over 53.5. I'd also would not mind sprinkling some alts here if he breaks a big one. Maybe even a little running back parlay. Very rare because you don't get too big alts there. But I do think that tells the story of Buffalo staying in this game, even if losing. Maybe a Dallas -2.5 and a James Cook 100 yards is something worth thinking about.
Yeah, because that'd be negatively correlated.
Yeah.
I think a note that we talked about on Sunday was while they have really lacked a secondary wide receiver, it appeared that they have kind of figured out, okay, well, let's use James Cook in a variety of ways, sort of as a secondary weapon. And so I think getting him more involved makes a lot of sense. By the way, I talked about Rashee Rice. I looked at some lines here. I thought we would get a better price on him. He is at 54.5. Justin Watson, however, is at 15.5. And he's been playing more than MVS of late. I don't know if that has anything to do with the egregious drops that he's had, but Justin Watson has been playing more snaps. He has been separating. We've seen that in our separation data. He separates well. He has some drops issues, but 15.5 is basically one catch, in this game. I think there's a real chance that this ends up being a little bit closer than the 8. I just don't know if we are really confident in the Chiefs pulling away from anybody. So I actually am going to switch this one over. I'm going to go with Justin Watson over 15.5. Receiving yards just feels, Justin Watson breakout game. It'll happen at some point.
It's coming. You can skip me. I'm trying to figure something out to get a good data point here. I saw a bunch of traditional stats about how the Browns struggle against running quarterbacks. I'm trying to figure out how to pull that up in Ultimate to actually verify those points.
You want to just share your screen and we'll work through it?
Yeah, we can just do it. It's good podcasting. Yeah, I don't know. Run concept, secondary, QB runs doesn't get me where I'm trying to go. So there must be something else in there. Anyway, I'm kind of tapped out. It's not my favorite week, but I did hear that, and I do. The Browns, they're not like quite as man heavy as they've been at times, but they do definitely play a good bit of man coverage. I'm sure they will be spying a good bit, but the counter to a good defensive line and a good pass rush. And Joe Flacco is 1-3 versus the Bears all time. How could I not mention that? So the Getsy's been kind of using like QB draw and a couple different concepts as kind of a counter to good pass rush units. And then you might get a lot of man coverage. Or just guys in trail technique, not paying attention to fields. I wouldn't go attempts this time. I think I would look at maybe him breaking off a bigger gain. But anyway, I can't find how to, this is bad podcasting. I can't figure it out in Ultimate as we speak.
Incredible. Maybe we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Shula, you got any more?
Yeah, I got one more. Really disappointed, honestly, in you guys. No spreads. The teasers have been lacking. I'll provide the people with both. The teaser legs, I'll throw out 3, one of which I don't think George is going to accept. So we'll leave that as the third leg here. But the ones that I'm really eyeing are the Rams, currently at 6.5, and the Texans at +2.5. I think the Texans really is appealing, especially if we get Stroud. But even if we don't, the Titans' offense is abysmal. Let's not forget that, even outside of they scored 2 touchdowns in the 2-minute drill. This is still a disastrous offense. And if they're not hitting on the Will Levis prayer balls where the ball kind of lands in DeAndre Hopkins' hands, this is not a team that's going to be able to build and extend leads, I don't think. And if Stroud is playing in this game, obviously the spread is a huge amount. I don't know why I'm hearing myself twice. But that's the Texans leg. And then the Rams, I don't think this needs to be overly complex here. This is a Washington team. The organization knows everyone's getting fired. Maybe not the enemy, but Ron Rivera is clearly out. This is a disaster of a defense. They already fired Jack Del Rio. The Rams have been awesome. You want to attack Matthew Stafford in the situational spots. This is exactly the situational spot which to attack Stafford. They're at home. It's a must-win game. They're way better than the Commanders. I don't think I want to overthink this one. I think it's a great teaser leg.
Yeah, I like it. And in fact, my last bet is a prop here, which is I like a little. I think you could get a little funky with Cooper Kupp. I like Puka Nacua. Here, the coverage unit for Washington has been pretty porous. You can see there, while Fuller has graded well, the rest of the group has not. So I can't find a number here for Nacua, but he was my last play, a little over on Puka. Washington's just not been able to cover anybody. You mentioned all the maladies that they have on the defensive side of the ball. So yeah, rolling with Puka. Brad,
also, I will say Just the only reason I didn't have a spread is because I was legitimately going to say New York Giants was my favorite spread play of the week. So that's my only defense there. And then the Rams game, just because we talked about it on Sunday, and Judah took the first, or was it the Rams team total? Maybe another alt opportunity there. Over 33.5 is plus 190. I mean, I could see them going nuclear on this Commanders defense, and I don't see why they would let up, really.
Yeah. It's a very good point. Okay. We are going to get to the locks of the week in just a second. But before we do, got a few other things to attend to. Pay some bills. This podcast brought to you by PrizePicks, prizepicks.com, where you can go and play the most engaging daily fantasy game that is out there. It's very simple. We've just talked about a ton of players that we like. You pick 2 or more players, and you choose more or less on a particular stat or number of fantasy points, and then you can profit accordingly. Pick up to 6 different players, and you can get 20x your money. They also have flex play options, so if you miss one of the legs, but the others hit, you can get a portion of the winnings total back in your bank account and then re-rack. And they also have a reboot policy. So if a player gets injured and doesn't play in the second half, they are very kind to you, and it works out really, really well. Can't recommend it more highly. The app, super easy to use. Go to prizepicks.com, go download the app, use the promo code forecast, and get $100 first deposit match at PrizePicks. Very much recommend it. You should go check it out. Also, our friends at Fabric have made it easy to get a quality term life insurance policy. You may not be thinking about that right now because you got a lot of other stuff to deal with, and that makes sense. But if you go handle this, then you don't have to worry about a lot of the crappy things can happen to you and your family. They also offer a ton of additional options for financial management, so you can rest easy knowing your family's in good hands while you go do the important things like betting on sports with us. Do yourself a favor and visit meetfabric.com/forecast. That's meetfabric.com/forecast. All right. It is time for our new segment, Get Up or Made Up. So here's how this works. This is very similar to what we did previously, which was I would read a Quibi show. If you're unfamiliar with Quibi, go look it up. I'm not going to describe it to you right now. Just enjoy the Wikipedia page and go read some of the prior show descriptions on Quibi. They were great. And I would read a real show description and a made-up one. And Eric would have to guess which one, whether it was real or not. So we're going to do the same thing with the greatest show on television, which is Get Up. It airs from, I think it's, what time does it start? Like 8 a.m. till whenever the hell. It's like a 5-hour show on ESPN. They never stop. It's incredible. The content is amazing. So I'm going to read you some quotes from Get Up, and you guys are going to tell me whether you believe this is a real quote or whether it is made up. Okay? So the way I'm going to do this, they have a lot of great characters on this show. I will tell you which character is speaking. All right, first one. This is Mike Greenberg. Hey, Kimberly, this game is called Dope or Nope. The fit on Cam Newton yesterday. What is that? Is that from the show, Get Up, or is that made up?
The laugh, the Greeny laugh was all time. What'd you say? What'd you say, Judah?
I said I'm going made up.
You're going made up? Kimberly was a great start too, but it was almost kind of like a giveaway. Like you're trying to make it seem so real. I'm trying to really dissect this. I'm gonna go Get Up though. I'm gonna go with real.
In fact, Dope or Nope is actually a segment that they aired.
Yes, let's go. Let's go.
Okay. Next one. This is also Mike Greenberg following up on a similar topic here. Mike Greenberg. This actually looks like an outfit that my wife and I wore to a Lederhosen themed party over the weekend, but that's neither here nor there.
It's not October, it's December. What would be the Lederhosen necessity?
It's the other weekend, so it could have
been. True. Or it could also be a fake story, and Greeny's just peppering in some thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I feel So you're throwing me off the scent, though. I'm gonna go with Get Up again.
No.
This one's in fact made up, although Greeny does talk about things that he does with his wife, and they're never not awkward. It's incredible.
That's
PFT's
favorite.
By the way, that this all is not just an excuse for George to watch 30 hours of Get Up film every week.
Yeah, babe. No, it's just content. It's for the podcast. It's for the. Can we change the channel? No. I need it.
5 a.m. every morning on the West Coast. I'm just sitting down, starting to get going, and the beautiful subtle tones of Rex Ryan really get me going. Okay, this last one is from Rex Ryan. This is a short one, so pay close attention. He is dissecting a particular play that was overanalyzed for basically the entire week. He said, "Now here's a toe I don't like."
Oh, he said that. He definitely said that. That's
no,
Rex
made
Ryan.
up.
I heard it. That is, I listened to a lot of Jets media growing up in New York. That is 100% Rex Ryan.
You nailed it. It is Rex Ryan. He did say that. This was right before he spent 25 minutes again comparing Brock Purdy to Joe Montana, which is literally what he does every single Monday. It's a phenomenal show. You can watch it. It starts at 8 a.m. Eastern time, 5 a.m. Pacific. It's phenomenal. Okay, let's pick some locks of the week. We have the following options. We have the great George Pickens, over 59.5, which is 2-1. We have the New York Football Tommy DeVito's +6 in New Orleans. TJ Hawkinson, I think we discussed 70 plus and 80 plus. 70 plus would be 2-1 +195. Laporta over 46.5. That is Sam Laporta. Justin Watson of the Kansas City Chiefs over 15.5 receiving yards. James Cook over 53.5 receiving yards. A teaser with the Houston Texans +9.5 and the Los Angeles Football Rams -0.5. Puka Nacua over. And we had one last one, which I forgot to write down. Samaj Pirine over 25 receiving yards at +150. Big slate. What are you guys thinking?
I think I'll jump in here. Giants +6. Love it. Couldn't love it more. Lock it in. Tommy D. Love it. And then I think Sam Laporta is my other one. And then what was one more? And James Cook. Those are my three favorite of the discussion.
Brad coming out fire in there, and
Yeah.
I appreciate
You like buying the Giants at the top. You're not worried about Tommy D.
Couldn't be less worried. Well, the spread didn't move. Yeah, it was 6.5 on Sunday night, and they dominate. Tommy Cutlets goes off, and it's 6. So
Yeah, I personally like the in addition to those, the TJ Lockinson. I mean, aside from the history, the tradition of this podcast, right. I do think this is all the makings of a TJ Hawkinson game here.
Yes, that's my favorite one. I like all of the others. The only one that I will cape for is Lockinson himself. We wait all season for these kinds of opportunities, fellas. I'm very excited. Tell your friends. Okay. Any others that we want to consider? Is that's a 4-pack?
The squeaky wheel on Pickens is tempting, I have to say.
Yeah. Pickens is tempting.
Squeaky wheel on Pickens is very tempting. Get him the ball, especially if Deontay Johnson's out, by the way.
Exactly.
Or limited in some way. I didn't even consider that angle.
The ops coordinator said we got to throw the ball to George Pickens today at his press.
That is squeaky wheel 101. The guy is going to be getting the ball. Let's not forget what Mr. Trubisky said last week. Right, he's going to be aggressive. Have no fear. Obviously, that's on a 1-week delay. I'm kind of tempted by Pickens.
You know how this works out, though. We hear all this, we get all excited, and he has like one catch for 6 yards.
That's why you go all. That's why I'm not losing a unit on a boring ass -115. Give me 2-1 or give me nothing. That's part. I agree with you, but that's kind of part of the thought process.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yep.
I feel you. Samaj Pirine is interesting. He gets a lot of run, and they throw to the running backs a lot.
They do. Also, this too. We could also do maybe a half unit on each of those.
I like
so
a
it's 5
half.
5 units, 6 bets. You get a 6-pack. It's a 6-pack for the price of 5.
Look at
or
that.
whatever.
We're winning a
Whatever you
sale.
You're a salesman, yeah.
Yeah.
Go if you want to buy a car, go hit up Brad. Okay, there it is. So we have George Pickens half unit, 2-1 at over 59.5. TJ Hawkinson full unit because we're not scared. Plus 70, 70 plus, 80 plus. I don't know. You choose. Sam Laporta, is that the other one? Or did
Yep.
we say
46.5.
46.5. James Cook or 53.5 rushing yards. And New York Giants plus 6. Those are full unit plays. And then Samaj Perine, half units tap to close it out. Over 25 receiving yards. That's plus 150. I love that. I love that bet. That was our podcast. Go watch Get Up tomorrow morning and on Friday. Have a good start to your week. We will see you on Sunday night where we will guess what Get Up talks about the next day. This is just basically a parody show for Get Up. We love you all. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.